Hello and welcome. This is Jeff Bird with Jeffrey Bird Coaching, and boy, we have got a great guest. He's not unfamiliar to our show. He's been here a few times before, and always a good conversation and a good time. And the topic that Dennis LaRue Jr. is going to bring to us today is on how do you know when it's time to leave? Boy, that can be just fraught with emotions and thoughts spinning about things. But how do you know? How do you know for sure that you're doing the right thing when you think it's time to leave? So, Dennis, thanks so much for being here again. Can't wait to hear all that's going on with you and all your thoughts on this.
Jeff, it's fantastic to be with you and everybody that's here. Everybody that's watching this. Thank you for taking the time. We're gonna have a great conversation, Jeff, because this is a tough topic for
Right.
many of us because we're we all look for we're all in that we're either going into something, or coming from something,
True story.
right? And so when do we know when to go into something? When do we know when to leave something? Because things are really good in some places, and when do I leave where I'm at to go someplace? I think most of us know when to leave a bad place.
Yeah.
I think we all struggle with, when do I leave a good place?
Yeah.
When do I leave a place where things are pretty good, but I'm getting this nudge to go elsewhere, and I don't know that I like it. Kind of like the video that I've seen recently. We got all these viral videos. One of my favorite viral videos shows this kid in a pool hanging onto a rope for dear life, screaming and crying, and you can see right next to him a couple pairs of legs in the water, and the water's only a little bit above their, right at their shins, and he's screaming and crying, and eventually they push his leg down, and he stands, and the water's not even maybe up to his knees, and he stops crying immediately. But I think a lot of us are that way.
Dennis, I just got to tell you, one time I had a roommate that had a boat, and I don't know how to swim, but I would go out fishing with him on the boat. And one time I was trying to get to the piling so I could put the rope around it and stuff, and I fell over the side of the boat, and I was just kind of panicky and stuff. And so finally he looked over and he's like, "Jeff, put your legs down." And so I put my feet on the bottom and just stood up and felt really silly. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's how that works." So I was so afraid of drowning. So yeah, that I've experienced what you're talking about.
Oh, that's fun. But when it's know when to leave. I know from my experience, I'm retired Air Force, and I heard throughout my career. Now, when I joined the Air Force, my plan was not to retire. My initial plan was, maybe I'll do one term, maybe two terms, and that's it. But then you have three kids and family, and the military is a tough life, but it's a good life, and it took care of all of, the Lord really used it to take care of me and my family, and really set us up long term
Yeah.
because of it. But the time came, and where I'm over 20. The whole thing is, when you hit 20, you feel like you're on borrowed time. Now you get to control, because before you get to 20, you're like, I gotta make it to 20, gotta make it to 20, retirement, retirement, retirement. And then you get to 20 and you're like, oh, I made it. So there's that sense of, okay, now what do I do? And I stayed 23 years.
Um,
And everybody that I ever talked to, when they were put at the retirement ceremony, they would say this. They would say, when it's time. Well, how do you know when it's time? Oh, you'll know. Hey, thanks for that. I would like the ABC outline of, you'll know when you know. And nobody in my military career had that. Maybe a few people had a plan in place of a certain thing. But I think for me, what happened is I was at this place where I was pursuing rank, pursuing my promotions, because promotions led to more money. More money means I can take care of family, bigger retirement. And that was kind of my focus at a certain point. It wasn't always my focus. And I remember I just I received my second to last promotion. And it ended up being my last promotion, by the way, because after that promotion, my mindset was, okay, I know how to get the next one. And so I just stopped. I was ready. I had figured out what I needed to do to get promoted. No brainer, first time, next time. And so what I did is I celebrated getting promoted and I started training for the next one, but there was something off there. There was something, I mean, I knew it, but I knew also there's something different in me. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't put my finger on what was going on because I was doing the studying and moving forward. Um, and then I had an assignment that I got an assignment and I was supposed to go to back over to Europe. And Jamie and I, my wife, we were excited. We're like, yes, because we were empty nesters coming up to this point. And our youngest had just pretty much finished high school. We're like, look, we got an assignment. We're leaving. You got to figure out what you're going to do because you can't come with us.
Hmm.
And we were all excited about the assignment, and the assignment got canceled. And it got canceled for different reasons. But one of the things, and I tell that story to say this: when do you know it's time to leave? Circumstances will tell you. Certain circumstances will come up and tell you. And my military circumstances at that point were, I was debt free at that point. And this assignment getting canceled, the circumstances were in order for me to get, excuse me, this next promotion. Part of the promotion path, I needed certain assignments and things, different titles that were included in different levels of experience in my leadership growth. But my circumstances were telling me, okay, you can't go here. My options for that growth are most likely the Pentagon, or I'm going to have to go to Korea by myself again for a year and leave my wife behind. This would be the third time that happened.
Yeah.
So my circumstances, looking at that, I said, maybe it's time. Maybe now. That's when my first thoughts were of maybe it's time to transition. Maybe it's time to put in the retirement. So no one to leave. Look at your circumstances. And there was also the shift in the emotions too. It's like I'm going from, okay, what are your priorities for making decisions? For some people, family is not included in their decision making. But for me, that was a critical component in my decision making. There were assignments in my Air Force career that I had canceled because of family situations that came up. It wasn't a good fit. In fact, my second tour to Korea, I took because of my family, because they were going to either send me to the Pentagon and move my family to the Washington, D.C. area. Nothing wrong with the capital region, but we'd been up there before. But my daughter, who's my oldest, was out of school at that time. She graduated high school. Her brother, a year behind her, was going into his senior year. I didn't want to move him his senior year. My background, I moved a lot in high school with my family. And while I'm love people and being around people and can adapt and adjust, I didn't want to have my son go through that. I wanted my son to finish high school with the same group of kids he started with. Because I didn't even do it. I went to 3 different high schools. So the decision was, hey, I'm going to go to Korea for a year. You finish school. Because if I don't go to Korea, I'm going to the Pentagon and we're all going. I'll go to Korea for a year. You finish school. You make a decision. If I get an assignment from there that we got to leave San Antonio, you can come with us. But if you want to stay in San Antonio, you graduate high school and you make your plan now.
Yeah.
And so family was always included in my decision making. So when do you know when to leave? First is you got to know your circumstances. What are circumstances telling you?
Right.
Are your circumstances pushing you in a direction? And are you resisting the push?
Yeah. So I got a question on this, and this will probably segue into where you're going with it next. So circumstances, yeah, I think are super, super good, like you're saying, but sometimes circumstances would tell you pursue something else, take the move, but yet you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to do, even though circumstance might say leave. And then sometimes it's the other way around. It's like you're talking about, you're comfortable in a circumstance, but there are reasons that you need to move, and you feel moved in that direction. But sometimes, like recently, I know my wife and I, we were like, okay, so circumstances would say, yeah, find something easier, find something that looks better on the outside, but yet you've got that sense, that intuition, or if you're a person of faith, that God-given sense that says, no, you're where you ought to be. Stay there. Just stay there, be still and wait. Don't move, even though circumstances might dictate it. So what's that internal part, that intuition part? How does that come into play?
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm a person of faith. We've talked about this on the show a little bit. Um, intuition is huge here. So my decision making process starts with God first.
Right.
What's he telling me? So in this case, the military case, he wasn't telling me to leave San Antonio. He said, stay here. It's just you need to leave the military and transition out. Well, there was nothing to transition out to for me.
Right.
There was no, it wasn't okay, go get a job or this. It was for me that prayer time. We've talked about Bob Bodina's book, The Two Chairs. I wasn't, yeah, The Two Chairs. No, I didn't know about the book at the time, but I was spending that time each day in my two chairs just praying. It's like, all right, Lord, I really sense this. You're pushing me out with these circumstances, and it's time to leave. And I'll be honest with you, it was comfortable. I mean, I'm getting a nice, I've got a nice monthly income coming in, and every month this is coming in, and it was an institution I've been in for 23 years. It's what I knew. And, hey, Jeff, I think we lost there.
Dennis,
There we go.
yeah, it occasionally does that for a minute. So sorry about that, but yeah, we're back.
Yeah, no worries. So what I was saying is I've been doing this for 23 years. I could have stayed 26 where I was at. One more promotion, I could stay 30.
Wow.
And that was my plan. I mean, my mental plan was, okay, I'm committed. I'll stay 30. We'll do 30, and that's it. And it was at that moment that it was like God said, okay, no, you're not going to do that. No, I mean, the intuition, it was that morning time. He's like, nope, it's time. It's time for you to move elsewhere. I'm like, well, Lord, what does that look like? What do you mean? And he just said, trust me. Okay. Okay. The good news is where I was at, I was allowed to push the button, as we call it in the military, a year in advance. So when I pushed the button to retire, it wasn't, okay, you're out in 90 days. Some people do that. You can get out as quick as 90 days. I said, no, I'll do a year in advance. I had a service commitment based off of what I was wearing. My promotion that I just received, I had a service commitment minimum I had to give. I said, well, Lord, I've got to give this. And he's like, got it. Hit the button. This is the date you're getting out. I'm like, okay. So 1 year, punched it. And in that process, there was the circumstances. The intuition was do it, but the circumstances were also telling me, hey, look at everything around you. You may not move again, or you have to move to these places. But you know what? Staying in Egypt's not a bad idea.
Right.
That's where I was, and I'm not saying it was bad. It was a good place, and we've got safety, we've got comfort here.
Oh.
I know what I'm wearing every day. The military told me what to wear every day.
Right.
And I knew where I was going to work, and I knew what I was doing every day at work. And now it was, what am I going to do? Do I just apply to be a civil servant and do what I do? Because that's what almost everybody in what I did in my career in the Air Force does. They turn around and they retire on a Friday in the military uniform, but they've gone through the process, and on Monday they come in wearing civilian clothes in the same job.
Wow.
And I thought, and I'm like, am I supposed to do that? But I didn't get that impression. My intuition was like, no, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. But that's what I thought it was. And my wife was under the impression that that's what it was going to be too, because we had talked about it, but it shifted. And we were a part of a ministry at that time, and that door was opening up,
Hmm.
and a nonprofit and ministry. And it did something I thought I'd been doing from the time I was 20 when I got saved. I thought I'm supposed to be in the ministry, pulpit type ministry.
Right.
And that thought never got out of my head. So knowing when to leave, the pastor was a friend of ours, and I spent a lot of time with him, and we would pray together and talk together. And we were both getting the sense that maybe I need to join his team. And really got that confirmation that I was to join this team. So that's what I did. Joined his team. Now, it was a nonprofit that had no money. It wasn't a salaried position, and it wasn't me, sending out all kinds of emails and stuff saying, like a radio program, hey, so we're a nonprofit, support a program, here's how you do it type thing. I didn't have any of that. I had my retirement income, and that was it from military, and prayed and prayed, and I got that sense that, yep, this is what you're supposed to be doing. I'm like, okay, Lord, you know what? You've answered a prayer 20 years that I've been praying for. But the story changes. So fast forward, I retire. I've slowly started into this ministry. Now I'm into this ministry. I'm 2 years into this ministry, and I'm sitting at my desk like this at my office. And I just finished a call with our John Maxwell folks. And at this point, I'm leading men's ministry, doing some speaking on Sundays and doing things. And I'm praying, and I hear this. I'm praying, and I hear God say this just as plain as we're talking right now. Are you done? I go, Lord, what do you mean, am I done?
Wow.
He says, are you done? Done with what? He goes, what you're doing right now. I go, this ministry? He goes, yeah. I said, I don't know, Lord, am I?
Yeah, you tell me.
You tell me. And I go, okay, well, what do you want me to do? He says, I want you to start a business. I want you to get outside the four walls. I want you to go and do coaching. And I said, okay. But I wasn't listening to that. So moving forward and where I'm at now, we're not having this conversation if I don't do that.
Right.
And the conversations we've had. So getting back to knowing when to leave, some of you out here have done what I did for 20 years. I thought this was, I was being incubated and marinated to move into that ministry. And I had this idea of what that was, and I wouldn't let that idea go.
Yeah.
And so God gave it to me because he couldn't get my attention to do what he wanted me to do until I got my mind off of that.
Huh. Never looks like we think it is.
Never.
Does it?
That's exactly it. It wasn't exactly what I thought it was, but in order for him to get my attention, he gave me what I asked for. So when do you know when to leave? If you're asking and asking and asking and asking and asking and asking and asking, eventually that time's going to come where you're going to be pushed out. So don't be surprised when it comes. It reminds me of the widow. The widow asked the judge over and 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 over again. And he finally gave in to her because he wanted her to leave, because she was persistent. So sometimes we're persistently asking for things, and what we think it is doesn't end up being what we thought it was meant to be. But in order to get there, we got to be pushed to leave. So the circumstances, look at your circumstances. When you're listening to God, are you listening to him? Those of you that are people of faith, are you listening to him? What is your family telling you? And my family was ready for me to get out of the military, but they thought that I was going to be doing something else. And we weren't necessarily in alignment. Now, this is, if I had to go back in time, my wife and I would have spent more time together on talking more on this topic than we did, because she was ready for me to do the government work. I wasn't, but I didn't communicate that with her. And so that caused some friction in us for a little while, and a little bit of bitterness in her relationship with the Lord because of my decision. and I
Yeah.
didn't share that with her and get us on and have us on the same page and talk it through. Had I done that, it'd have been different. So moving forward, when that time came to adjust, she knew it was time too. We talked about it and saw the adjustments in the ministry and where we were at. And she said, "Yeah, it's time." So we moved out and started the coaching. Here we are today, and I mean now it's worked to where I'm also at a university as an adjunct faculty coach. I'm employed there, and that wouldn't have opened up if I would have stayed in the military. In fact, it was a military member that helped me get that.
That's amazing. But let me ask you this. So especially like with the college, and a lot of people that you coach, so we're primarily speaking to people who are coming from a faith basis, but a lot of people aren't.
Mm-hmm.
But they've still got a purpose. I mean, none of us made ourselves. None of us can make one brain cell. Something greater than ourselves created us, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a purpose there. Even if you don't believe, in a creator, in a God like that, there's still like some sort of a sense of purpose. So even somebody who doesn't prescribe to any particular faith
Mm-hmm.
might still be sensing a tug, an intuition in a certain
Yes.
direction. So I know that you do coaching. I'm sure that through the university you do it with people who are not people of a similar faith and whatnot. So when you're
Sure.
coaching those people just on when to make the move, when to make the decision based on just what they're sensing on the inside and their intuition or their gut, if you will, how do you go about helping them navigate if they're not doing the two chairs moment every day and asking
Mm-hmm.
directly in prayer, what should I do? Because even as we know, sometimes even when we pray that, we don't have a clear answer. It's just like, just wait, trust, like you already said. But so for the people who don't even do that,
Mm-hmm.
what how do you help them move forward?
Well, first off, is I'll ask them, do they trust themselves?
Hmm.
Like, look at the decisions you've made in the past. How are you at decision making, discerning the moment in decision making? Would you say you're good or not so good? And some of them will say not so good. Okay, well let's take a look at that, because that might be a belief system that may not be really true.
Hmm.
Because really, if we're all unique and we're at where we are today, then you're where you are and you're exactly where you're supposed to be. It may have been a decision that wasn't a great decision, but did you learn from it? Well, yeah.
Hmm.
So if that came up again, would you make the same decision? Well, no. Okay, well then you've grown.
Yeah.
So pointing that
Good.
that importance of you're growing, you've made different decisions. You needed to make that decision in order to see that you don't need to make that decision again.
Right.
Or what was missing in the thought process. Now, for those people that have um, you know, mentors and coaches, family, you got to have your inner circle. If you're making decision just based on your own understanding and all that you know a lot. But there are people out there that can give you perspective that you need that you're missing, like my wife, or considering my kids and talking to them, but also talking to parents, pastors. Um, I made a decision in my military career based off of talking to three people who had been in for over 20 years. They were the highest ranking in my organization.
Hmm.
Based off of changes I was seeing coming down the pipeline, I asked them if they were in my shoes, what they would do. Two
Hmm.
out of three said they would make a change. They told me the opportunity that I saw, they would take it.
Yeah.
So I trusted their advice and I took it. It was a great decision. I loved it. I loved the result because of that. But I needed their guidance based off of their experience in what we were doing to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah, it reminds me, I've got a friend who will call me sometimes and she's like, I just need to get out of my head and look at this, just see things, see life through some different eyes. So sometimes
Mhm.
getting those friends that know us, know our situation, and getting their perspective can be gold too.
Uh, Yeah. So who's the sounding board in your
Yeah,
life? It could
yeah,
be a friend. Coaches like us, we're that way. We're going to ask you questions, not to poke and pry, but we're curious. So we're going to ask you a question based on what you said, because the way you said it or the way you answered the question, or there was something in the way that you said the right words, but your facial feature said, I don't believe a word I said.
Right.
And people, we know the right answers, but that doesn't mean we're doing the right answers.
Right.
And so seeing all that, so, helping somebody take that next step is asking them, what does the next step look like? What's the next right step look like? Or if you're in a dark room, where do you see the most light coming from in the room?
Oh, I like that.
Walk towards the light. Nobody wants to walk towards the darkness. No,
Right.
forget that light. I'm going to go that way. No, we want to get out of the dark into the light. We want to see.
Yeah.
So for that person that, they're not faith-based, and that's okay. Where do you see the most light go in the next right step for you? What's the next right step? And if you don't know, then maybe the next right step is wait till tomorrow. Maybe you grow where you're planted.
Yeah.
Maybe today isn't the day. Keep doing what you're doing today, because the pivot might come tomorrow. It might be a year. In one case, it was 2 years. It can be a long time, short time, but you've got to be able to recognize the journey you're on. And many of us struggle with, well, I don't even know what the end of my journey looks like. I would start there. If you got to the end of your life, how would you want to be? This is one thing that I do with everybody, and I highly recommend. This may sound a little morbid, but bear with me for a moment.
Sure.
Write your obituary.
Mm-hmm.
Your write your obituary. What do I want my life? How do I want to be remembered? What does my life look like at the end? What am I doing? Who am I with? How am I spending that time? But write an obituary. This is how you want to be remembered. Because I've been to funerals, and we always have the viewings, and others and friends and family and colleagues show up, and they share the memories that they have of the individual. And they're wonderful and amazing and all that. Well, that tells me that that person wanted to be remembered that way, because that's how they lived. So writing your obituary doesn't leave it up to chance at the end. When you write it, you walk it. And that's how you'll be remembered. So how do I know when to leave? How do I know when to make a decision? If it's not in alignment with how I want to be remembered, that's probably a good indication that you don't make that decision.
And Dennis, I just want to comment for a minute on the last 2 points that you said, the one about the obituary, and then also about maybe it's going to be some waiting for today, tomorrow, a year. You said that. So I was thinking as you were saying that sometimes the things that I'm so spun up about are things that don't have to be resolved today. That there's nothing I can do about it today. Maybe the decision doesn't exist today. Maybe I sense that it will. Maybe I don't sense it at all. But that sometimes it's like, okay, let's just take that thing that's causing me so much distress off the burner. Just put that on the back burner and just enjoy today. I know, we've got a friend, Mike Poulin, who's been on the show before too, and he says, live on a 24-hour cycle. It's like, I can't do anything about tomorrow today anyways. So if there's nothing I can do about it today, why am I going to worry about it today? What good am I going to do other than suffer twice, ruin today, and then potentially I suffer again tomorrow? Or maybe I don't. Maybe the thing's cleared up by tomorrow and I just suffered needlessly. So I love that with with the circumstances, with the family, with the friends, with the new eyes, and then also just that intuition and is this something that needs to be done right now? And just believe, I've got to believe that when I have to make the decision, when the thing needs to be done, that I'll see what to do. And sometimes I think I bar trouble for tomorrow by looking so far ahead or trying to demand what the next 5 years are going to, that I see what the next 5, 10, 20 years are going to be like, instead of going, okay, let me just let that go. There's nothing I can do about it today. Let me just live where I am today and just take a breath and enjoy right where I am, and then live in that moment.
Yeah, and there's some of us, I get this way. I don't like to look 5 years in advance. It paralyzes me because
Right.
it paralyzes me because I see so many options to so
Yeah.
many different things. I'm just one of those people. And so rather than focus on those 5 years, I'm and what I'm doing, I usually focus on who I'm being
Mm.
because
Yeah.
the doing will show up.
Right.
What am I designed to do? It reminds me of the movie The Titanic. You
Mm.
know, here is the character Jack, which is Leonardo DiCaprio. He's not of high class society, but he's at dinner with
Right.
these high class people, and they're all drinking champagne and making a toast. And one of the ladies says to him, "What about you, Jack?" She knows he's not high class and tries to say something to put him down. And he goes through this conversation, but he says this. He says, "You know what? I live my life day to day." And I'm paraphrasing here. I live my life day to day. He says, "You know what? I've got air in my lungs." And he's an artist, so I've got my paper and my pen. I got my mind. And he said, "Just yesterday, I was sleeping under a bridge and so and so. And now here I am today on the finest ship, drinking champagne with you fine people." And I think all of us could learn a little something from that scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, it eventually, well, we know how that story ends with the Titanic,
Right.
you know, but our story isn't that way. Sometimes, yesterday we're over here in a ditch where things are going, and then within 24 hours, boom, it can pivot and change in a heartbeat. But are you looking for it?
Yeah.
Are you believing for it? That's another thing. Your mindset. If your belief system says, "I'll never fill in the blank," then you're going to get what your mindset tells you because you're not open for it. You're going to miss it because opportunity is always coded differently. It's kind of like a Kinder egg. These Kinder eggs are, my grandkids love them. They're chocolate eggs with toys on
Mm.
the inside. They didn't know
Mm.
there were toys on the inside. They just thought it was candy. Most of us look at the egg and just see chocolate. Oh, I like chocolate. And we don't realize that inside the chocolate is a surprise.
Mm. Mm.
And we'll just say, "I don't feel like chocolate today." Well, we just missed the surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard somebody say one time that life is a series of brilliant opportunities cleverly disguised as impossible problems.
That's good. That's another great point that you bring up. How do you know when to leave? If you're afraid to leave, it's probably time to leave.
Oh, right. That's a good one.
Fear. If I'm scared to leave, it's probably the time you need to be leaving.
Yeah. For your own growth, because we've gotten too comfortable
Yeah,
and it's time to
true.
grow. Huh.
Or the problem, or you see the problems. Well, I can't leave because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm being rational. No, you're listening to fear.
Uh,
You're looking for all the reasons it's not going to work. Well, what about the reasons that it will work? What
right.
happens if none of that happens? What
So,
happens if, whether if I leave and go here, what happens?
right.
What if I thought this ministry, I was going to be in it and that I was going to be here for a while. In 2 years, no. And in a couple of years, that ministry closed completely.
Wow.
So that ministry doesn't even exist anymore.
Wow.
But for me, God had to give me what I kept asking him for or believing for to get me to the place where he can now put me where he's supposed to put me.
Hmm. Amazing. Well, Dennis, wow, that's a lot to digest. And what you just started mentioning about fear, I think we're going to have to do on another show. I think that could be its own topic.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
know,
I agree.
but wow, but that's so much. So just can you just summarize those main points again? Did you have that written down?
Yeah. So the main points here is, how do I know when to leave? Your circumstance. Look at your circumstances. What is it telling you?
Right.
The who in your life, as Bob Bodine tells us,
Right.
the who, and in this case, the who is what's God telling you if you're a person of faith,
Right.
and if not, then what about your family, your inner circle?
Yeah.
What are they sharing with you? What are they seeing that you're not seeing? Because they'll show you the blind spots of what you're missing.
Mhm.
Are they in alignment? Are you in alignment with the key decision makers in your life? And then also, what about your purpose? Is
Mhm.
this in alignment with your purpose and
Mhm.
how you want to be remembered?
Wow.
And then be prepared to with the decision making. If you're not sure the bigger picture, then the question is, what's the next right step? Where is the most light in the dark place you're in right now? Imagine you're in a closet or in a cave. Where do you see the most light?
Mm. Love that. I have not heard that one before. I love that.
Take that next step.
Wow. That is awesome. Well, Dennis, thank you for that. I think I'm going to be thinking about those things myself. Wow, what great questions. And also, just being open to that feedback, as well as most of us know our circumstances, but getting that feedback from other people. I know if anybody else is like me, you like to, have typically like to do everything unilaterally and stuff, but asking those questions, giving people permission to speak to us about what they actually see in our circumstances. Or maybe if you're like me, maybe when you're talking about passion and purpose, maybe you've even got a purpose that's clear to everybody else but not to you, so you can
That's
get two
good.
things at once. You can get the opinions of the other people and get a sense of your purpose at the same time. I remember once, I went to thank a woman who had given me an opportunity, and I said, "Thank you so much for seeing that in me and creating this opportunity." And she said, "Well, I only saw what was obvious." And I messaged her back and I said, "Well, it wasn't obvious to me." So, what's obvious to somebody else may be the thing you need, but not the thing that's obvious. So, wow. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, writing that obituary, that epitaph now, that's, thinking about, like, do I want to just be known as a guy who was a stress ball, or do I want to be known as a guy who just believed for the right thing to come, whether it was in prayer or whether I just believed that the right things were going to work out, and being stressy today wasn't going to get me there. So just having that peace about me, that quietness, that I think it's kind of a wisdom too. So wow, a lot to think about, Dennis. That's was so relevant, I think, for a lot of us, whether it's a big move or even a little move.
Sure.
uh, we can apply those same principles. So thank you so much for being with us and for bringing that to us and for sharing your experience and how it played out there and how we can all take those key points and boiling that down into those key principles and points so that we can all take it away and apply it, take from your experience those key things and apply it to our experience. So thank you, Dennis. And and I'm serious about doing another one on fear, because I think that's a big one for a lot of us. So we'll get that scheduled and get that done. But hey, thanks so much for the
Yes.
time today. Appreciate you being here as always.
Oh, my pleasure, Jeff. Thank you for having me. And for those of you out there in the audience, um, as you're thinking through this is some heavy stuff. There's a reason it came out, when it came out, and how it came out today. So just eat the meat, spit out the bones, and take what you can take today that pushes you to that more light in the cave that you're in right now. Just take that next step. So good. Jeff, thank you so much. And I look forward to having the conversation on fear, because that's been a tough one. I've had to work through a lot of that too. And
Yeah,
man.
you're in good company. Both me and most people I know, and then sometimes it still comes up.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Sure
wow.
does.
Well, I will be looking forward to that, and I thank you again for what you shared with us today, and look forward to. I'll be watching this one a couple more times to think about those things. So, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Blessings to you, my friend, and blessings to all of you out there.
Absolutely. So, hope everybody has a great day. See you next time.